Welcome to the Afropolitan Podcast, hosted by Eche Emole, founder of Afropolitan. On the show, we chat with Afropolitans whose footprints form the foundation of systems dedicated to building the future of a bold and progressive Black community. In each episode, our guests share their working formulas, the hard facts about leaving familiar terrain, embracing the unknown, and staying relevant afterwards. Listen as we extract the blueprints of fearlessness, innovation, and progress.
In today's episode, we chat with Deeze, the director of Vibes at Fractional, a decentralized protocol that enables collective ownership and governance of one or more NFTs. Deeze talks about his journey into crypto and provides advice on how to navigate the world of NFTs. We hope you enjoy this episode. Deeze, welcome to the Afropolitan Podcast. How are you doing? How are you feeling, bro?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm just another day out here in gloomy, hot Midwest United States.
I mean, it's nothing compared to the Bahamas.
No, I miss our time. Somehow it is, temperature-wise hotter, but weather-wise, extremely worse than the Bahamas. We had a, perfect, I think, 70 to 80 degree weather period for the week we were there. Very little rain outside from that one day. It was great.
It's about to be a really hot summer. It looks like that.
Yeah, it looks like it's gonna be hot around the world.
So Deeze, let's talk NFTs. We wanted to introduce our community to first of all, the concept of NFTs. Why are they important? And why do you think they're going to change the future? How did you get started with NFTs?
Yeah, so some backstory about me. I first got into cryptocurrency in general in 2017. And I got into it from the lens of trying to make money, like I think a lot of people do. And I got burnt because I had no idea. Like I did pretty well, but then over the course of 2018, I lost all my money. And I got burnt just trying to do greedy things to try to make more money, like buy a token and hope it goes up. And I just put all my money into a token. And then the tokens would go down, and then I would just buy more tokens that would go down more. And over time, I realized I got to teach myself how to invest and what to do. But I felt like fundamentally cryptocurrency, even though I had lost money, was such a powerful idea because you now have this decentralized financial service that's open to the entire world that doesn't discriminate at all. All you need is a phone or a computer with an internet connection. And if you can get that, you have access to this entire suite of decentralized services. And that to me was super powerful, even though I lost my money. So I stuck around and just put my spare money from my job into Ethereum and another network called Tezos. And in 2020, I started working from home because the pandemic happened. And I was still paying attention to cryptocurrency all the time. I was still, every day on Twitter, in Discord and Telegram, looking at the space. And at the time, I was still focused on the tokens. I wasn't aware of NFTs. I knew what CryptoKitties were, and I thought they were kind of stupid because in my mind, you could just breed them and you would have so many that there would never be enough buyers to buy the supply of CryptoKitties because they were just infinitely bred and they were worth pennies. And I was like, okay, NFTs are dumb because I just thought NFT equaled CryptoKitty. But in the summer of 2020, I learned what a CryptoPunk was. And that changed my perspective on NFTs by a lot. So time frame is September 2020. I bought a floor CryptoPunk for $1,200 and I joined the Punk's Discord. And I just started spending all my time in the Punk's Discord, and all the Punk owners were the stewards of the NFT community. And they were always very humble and honest and authentic with me. And they held my hand through all my questions about NFTs. I thought NFTs were CryptoKitties and just pictures. And no, they told me NFTs can be anything. Look at all this art. Here's a bunch of 101 art that's going on. There's people writing books and there's people doing generative art, which blew my mind. When you can generate art that you don't know what it's going to look like until you mint it. Like that blew my mind. I got really into the generative art rabbit hole because of Snowfro, who created this website called Art Blocks. Snowfro was somebody in that punks community who was a moderator and looked at as like a elder. Like he was somebody who claimed the punks in 2017, and he made a new platform for people to make generative art. So I started spending all my time in that community, and just I loved the art that I was collecting. And at the time, it was fairly cheap. Like to mint Snowfro's project, it was called a Chromie Squiggle. It was like $30 a squiggle. So it's fairly affordable. And then other projects came out that were between like $100 to $200 a piece. And after like a month or two, it just blew up. And it was like, oh, now it's very competitive. People are spending like $3,000 for pieces. And it was like crazy to see how quick the time shifted from like this small grassroots community that was just buying things and collecting things they love to like this very big trend with a bunch of speculators who came in, and it all happened over the course of a few months. And then it, the ultimate cycle happened over the course of like a year, but it went way up and crashed way down. And now we're at a more healthy point in that ecosystem. But I was just so attracted to NFTs over the tokens because I was so connected to them. Like you have a picture of art, you feel like you're the only one who owns this, and you have it up in a gallery in your virtual like gallery, or you have it up in your house, and like you don't want to sell your NFT. You start, making these connections with the artists and the creators and the communities. The NFT communities are borderless. Like you're in a Discord with people, you don't know where they're at. Like some people are in Europe, some are in Asia, some are in Africa, some are in South America. And you just meet all these people, and you're all drawn together by these common threads, whether it's like a profile picture community, an artist that you like to collect, like the generative art platform. And I feel like a sense of belonging that I never felt in the real world in any community. Like I went to a college with 60,000 people, and I made like 20 friends over 4 years. I never felt that connected. I probably only talked to like 6 of those 20 friends now. I just have so many, I feel like, stronger bonds and more fulfilling relationships with the NFT space. So sorry to ramble on like how I got drawn into NFTs, but I felt like that was kind of a needed perspective to give people a little bit of background about me, and then also why I'm just like so focused on the NFT space. And yeah, so sorry for the ramble, but that's some
it's okay. It's okay. And so then let's talk about, because for a lot of people, they seem to confuse NFTs only with like PFP art. Could you give people the possible ranges of what NFTs, and just to clarify, they stand for non-fungible tokens. Could you give people your idea of, first of all, what they could potentially be used for in the future?
Yeah, so NFT is a tricky word because when you say non-fungible token, you kind of just like get a weird look from people. They like turn their head sideways and look at you like, what the hell is that? So like, when you try to think of everything in your life and you try to put it into either a fungible or non-fungible bucket, you come to realize that like 99% of things in your life are actually non-fungible. Whether it's the mouse that you're using your computer with, the headphones on your head, the glasses, like the shirt, all of that is a non-fungible item. There might be copies, but none of them are that same piece made with those same atoms. And when you look at non-fungible tokens, you just have to think like non-fungible things in real life, but in a digital form. And they could literally be anything. Like it could be the speaker on your desk won't be an NFT, but like you could have a house deed that is an NFT, then that you trade ownership of homes with an NFT. You can have, like you said, art. You can have a pass so that like you're getting some type of like say like a Netflix subscription could be an NFT, and then you could trade your Netflix subscription. You can have trading cards. You can have like virtual worlds that are like 3D files, like Minecraft servers could be an NFT. Like the point is dang near anything digital could be an NFT. So right now we're stuck on basically art and like profile pictures. I feel like that's what people think of, and they're anchored to seeing like Bored Apes or a CryptoPunk or another high value NFT and just thinking like, that's stupid. They don't realize like the term NFT actually means such a wide spectrum of possible things that we really are at like the first inning. We're like the top of the first inning, the first pitch of where NFTs will be in our lifetime. So yeah, I think like people need to open their mind up a little bit and not just look at what exists and then think that's all that there can be with NFTs, but to look at what doesn't exist and then how this technology can maybe make something better than what we have in the physical world.
Definitely. So Deeze, talk to me about the journey to Fractional. How did you come to become director of Vibes over at Fractional?
Yeah, so Fractional is a platform where, should I explain Fractional first, probably? But it's a platform where you can have fractional ownership of like the world's basically most sought after NFTs. We try to get like CryptoPunks and Nouns and autoglyphs and Bored Apes and NFTs that you normally can't just go buy a one-on-one of because they're like $1 million+ but making them accessible to everybody. So like say we have a fractional punk that is worth $1 million and it's in a vault, people could still buy if they wanted like $1 of that punk. They would just own a very small fraction. And the point is to try to reduce the entry cost and kind of increase the access to the space so that people who come in who don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars don't feel like, oh, I just need to like gamble on something that isn't good or like doesn't have, what do you want to say, like historical relevance or a community or whatnot. Like, I just want to have a part, like it'd be like owning a stock, right? In a way, but not a stock because you're collecting NFTs and you're fractionally owning the NFT. You're not like investing in companies or anything. But anyway, I got involved with Fractional because I met the founder on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter. He's very active on Twitter. And we had known each other for a year. He had tweeted out something along the lines of, you know, we're hiring for several positions. He also, I believe he did a podcast with Delphi Digital and talked about everything that Fractional was doing different than the existing fractionalization platforms, which at the time were Niftex and Uniquely. And when he explained how simple his vision was for the fractional.art website versus the other ones, I was like, oh, I would love to work with him because this makes so much sense to me. It's making basically the community more accessible to everybody. It's making, you know, in my head, I thought I could stick at my normal Web2 job and not contribute anything to the space other than shitpost, or I could join Fractional and help build a platform that opens up the space for everybody. And it just seemed like a no-brainer to try to join them and figure out like, what can I do to help them grow? So the title director of Vibes that you brought up, that came up because they were looking for somebody to do a mixture of like community management and a little bit of marketing and a little bit of like investor relationships and a little bit of partnerships and also a little bit of Discord like moderation and just like a bunch of different things that couldn't be summed up in one title. And at the end of the day, it was like I suggested, you know, what do you think of the title like director of Vibes or something with the word vibes? And they're like, that's perfect, like 100%. They didn't even, you know, they thought that idea was so good and we just kind of ran with it. And it's been kind of cool because now we've seen other director of Vibes pop up around, like different projects. I think there's been like 7 or 8 that I've seen where it's just like, oh, another team is hiring for a director of Vibes. And yeah, so sorry for another long-winded explanation.
No, trust me, it's better. So that for people looking to fractionalize, right, what would it look like to own a collectible with a group of strangers or friends?
So there's a few different ways to collect fractionally right now. Like, say me and you just wanted to split a piece 50-50 as friends. Mm-hmm. I could make a vault and we could make 2 additions or like 2 fractions. I could send you 1 fraction. I can hold the other. And now we have like the vault split between the two. We would each have a vote on the price. Say I voted for a 50 ETH buyout and you voted for a 100 ETH buyout. It would weight those together and the piece would be able to be bought out for 75 ETH. So like in a really small scenario, that's how it would look with friends. You would just take, you can make as many fractions as you would want, but I just use the example of 2 because it's really simple for math. If you want to do it in a group setting, there's a couple different ways. Right now, the most popular is a website called PartyBid. And on PartyBid, you're able to pick an NFT and start a party. So like you could go to a website like OpenSea or Foundation and find an NFT that you wanted to buy as a group. And you would say, I want to buy this NFT, it's 10 ETH, and I want to put up 1 ETH of myself. I could start the party, put 1 ETH in, and it would now show on their page like, hey, there's a party for this. There's 1 out of 10 ETH filled, and it's looking for contributors. And what people do is then they like share or market their parties, and they fill up and buy something together. I think some of the biggest parties I've seen, there was like a zombie CryptoPunk that sold for over 1,000 Ethereum. That one was pretty exciting. There's been a Naum. Not sure if you know what the Naums are, but there was a pretty big Naum one that went for a couple hundred ETH. But the party bids are the most public way. Like you don't need to know anybody. You can just go to the website and look at the parties that are open and see if any interest you. And you could also do private parties on their website. So if I wanted to make it like only for my community or only, you know, people with this link, I could make a private party as well. So there's a few different options for like group ownership. But the most simple is, you know, me and you, 2 friends, 1 person fractionalizes it, I send you the other token, and we're done with it. Whereas the more complex ones are using party bid and pulling together funds from, you know, 50, 100, 500 people, and then buying out something that way.
I love it. So let's talk war stories, Deeze. I mean, a lot of people hear about rug pulls. They also hear about like some failed NFT projects.
Yes.
What would you say, like, are some of the examples you've seen of rug pulls? And what advice would you give to newbies who are coming into the space for what to look out for when it comes to joining or participating in NFT projects?
Yeah, I've definitely been rugged dozens of times. You know, I take a bunch of risks. But I think the number one thing people need to think about in this space is risk management and survival. And what I mean by that is like, say you're coming in with $2,000 and that's like, you're not going to have another $2,000 for months. And this is like your stack to make it. I would probably not put all 2,000 into like a fresh mint with a team I don't know. With a community that I'm not paying attention to, and just hope it goes well. And I see people do that, where they just come in the space and they look at what's minting, and they just go in, mint something, it doesn't work out, and then they're out of the game. They just lost all their money. So I think like when you're coming in, you need to think about, okay, if this goes wrong, what is my maximum downside? Like, AKA, this is probably going to go to 0 if I'm wrong. So I'm going to lose all the money I put in. And then am I going to still have other money left to take other risks? So when you're vetting teams, like outside of risk management, and say you're looking at teams, one of the most important things right now is making sure that the founding members are reputable people. Like you need to be able to look at their Twitter, see they have a stake in the community, see that they are hopefully doxxed so that you know who they are. There's a lot of anonymous teams who just make a project and they take the funds after the mint and then they leave and then nobody knows who the anonymous team was and it's hard to track them down and have a recourse of action. So you have to be really careful when you're getting into new projects. I would also say that I look out for communities who are really active on social media. For me, I'm most active on Twitter, so I try to see like what other communities do I see adjacent to the ones I'm in that are constantly either not necessarily promoting their project, but just being active with like that project as their avatar more so than like, I don't want to say like shilling. Like I don't want someone to just talk about their project 24/7, 365. That's not normally a great sign. But I like to see a bunch of different people using those avatars and staying with those avatars for time, because it shows that they're committed to that one PFP and that there might be staying power there.
Yep, definitely.
I think like the team is just the most important thing. We've seen so many people come in anonymously, drop, make a couple million and leave. And like, it's happened so many times that I won't mint anything from an anonymous team unless it's an anonymous person I've known on Twitter for like over 2 years. Because there are reputable anonymous people. Like I'm pseudo anonymous, right? Like I would say I'm very reputable, even though I'm talking about Doc's founders. So, you know, you're one of the few people who know what I look like because you got to meet me in person in the Bahamas. But on Twitter, you know, I don't have my face everywhere. Like it's hard to find out who I am. But I built my reputation through being in the space for the last almost 6 years, brick by brick. And people understand that. And there are other people like me. Just in general, for new people, I think as a blanket rule, it's easier because they don't know, they don't have the experience in the space to know like, oh, that's a good anonymous, or like that's a safe, reputable anonymous person.
For people who are coming in, who are newbies to the space, right? Could you speak to the pseudonymous nature of like the NFT project, why it's something that the community has embraced? And the whole difference between, do you want team members to be doxxed or non-doxxed? And by doxxed, it means like when they're no longer anonymous. Can you speak to like that, the whole idea of why pseudonymity is even really a thing within the NFT space?
Yeah, I'll speak from my personal experience first, and then maybe guess as to other people's experiences second. Personally, my pseudo-anonymity comes from my previous job, where I didn't want my Twitter persona to be tied to my name so that my employer wouldn't see what I tweeted about. Because if you follow me, you know, every day I tweet a picture of a joint or a rig or some way to smoke weed. And it's just like kind of my brand to be kind of a stoner. And I, you know, worked at a job where I had to get drug tested to get the job. And I didn't want anybody to, you know, Google my name, find my Twitter account and be like, oh shit, like we just hired this kid. So I always stayed anonymous that way. And I built up my reputation in the NFT space through that like anonymous profile. But through the anonymous profile, I keep saying anonymous. The word is pseudo-anonymous because it is like, I'm Deeze. I'm not like a new name every time you see me. I'm not like Aaron. And then in the Bahamas, I was Tom. And then the next time you talk to me, I'm going to be Jonathan. Like, I'm Deeze everywhere. But anyway, when I had my Twitter account, like, I was just being myself. And by being myself, a lot of people got to see, like, oh, shit, like, this Deeze guy is just being, like, honest, and he's himself. Like, every day I would just say what's on my mind. I'd call out bullshit if I saw it. If I was wrong, I admit I'm wrong and, you know, learn from it and move on. And people, you know, I think they got to see like me being authentic, and then they got to be like more authentic with me because they knew, oh, like Deeze isn't bullshit. And so like when I'm talking to Deeze, like I don't bullshit. And it felt like I made like a lot of good relationships that way. Fast forward to the pandemic where I'm working from home and I'm still working my old job. The crypto stuff starts going off and I'm like, you know, I have already built up this persona as Deeze. I don't really feel like I need to come out now as me because I'm already Deeze. Like Deeze feels like me. Like I've been my authentic self as Deeze for the last, you know, even before crypto, when I had my job, I was always Deeze on Twitter. So it's like, I've had this name for so long. I feel like I am already myself through it. So another thing that really solidified the pseudo-anonymous aspect for me was my first NFT event was NFT NYC last November. And while I was there, I did a 2-hour-long Twitter space on stage with no mask, like I was fully doxxed on stage. And after the space, like I had a couple, you know, weird interactions with people who kind of like hung around and like stalked me around the buildings, and like half hour later, just come out and be like, hey man, I've been trying to talk to you. Like, And it created these like weird interactions I didn't love because I was always like kind of paranoid and anxious, like, oh shit, like is this person like coming up to me to, sometimes it's like people just want to thank you. Sometimes people want to autograph a picture. It's strange. It's something I've never had to deal with. And my friend who's fully doxxed, who has, probably 100,000 followers more than me at this point, like started having like panic attacks next to me, like when we were at NFT NYC. And like he would get swarmed more than I would. And it started making me think like, I can't have that happen to me. Like I got to protect myself in a way. Like my mental health is more important than like anything. Like my mental and physical and like, that is so important. And I'm like, oh shit, like, okay, I got to protect this. So when I went and spoke at Gary Vee's conference, I wore a ski mask with like a bucket hat and sunglasses. Like you can't even see the color of my eyes on the camera or anything. So yeah, it's been interesting. Like I kind of feel like in a way, like I understand why people like Marshmallow and but Dead Mouse is really doxxed. I guess I can't use him as an example. But like someone like Marshmallow, he's doxxed. You could Google his name, but he still has like a separate identity, like away from Marshmallow that's like less hounded or like less known. And like I think that's like what'll end up happening to me someday. Like you'll know, like you'll be able to Google fucking Deeze and find my name somehow, but it'll be a layer away from like Deeze, the Twitter account, that it'll still protect me enough. I think that's the ultimate spot where I'll end up. But yeah, that's why I'm pseudo-anonymous. I think other people are pseudo-anonymous for a variety of reasons. I think in general, though, it does help people be their authentic selves through like an avatar. You could pick up any profile picture and then make this like a more authentic version of yourself. Like I think Punk6529 is a good example. He's like a hoodie punk, has like a couple 100,000 followers, and he just writes a bunch of really thoughtful Twitter threads about life and cryptocurrency and art. And like, I think, not to get off too much on tangents, but I just think the pseudo-anonymous accounts, they allow people to just be a little more authentic and genuine.
Let's talk about the hot projects in this space, right? Like we did Azuki's, the Bored Apes, the Mutants, Konax, even Eche. What would you say? So, for example, I think over the last month, the Azuki, would you call it scandal, came out? What would you say were your thoughts around that? Like, how did you feel when that got revealed in terms of like Zagabond being part of like previous maybe rug pulls? And is there a path to redemption for people who've done that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I owned, I think, 5 Azuki when that news came out. And I read the article and I thought, well, this is strange. Like, why is he putting this out right now? Like, Azukis were at like 27 ETH or almost 30 ETH floor. And I didn't immediately feel like I had to sell mine or like do anything. I just thought, wow, this is weird. But later that night, he got on a Twitter space. And I listened to the whole space. And it was one of the most like pathetic responses and excuses and lack of ownership and lack of like honesty that I've seen from any project founder. He basically just used the words learning experiences and product market fit to justify, building 3 other communities to extract profit and then ghost them and abandon them. Under like the guise of creating character-driven founders, which in a literal sense mean fake founders, like Philip the intern, the funks guy who flipped 10,000 funks by hand. So after listing that space, I sold 3 of mine, and one of them I took like a $50,000 loss on because I just felt really bad as a holder. I was like, this is not great, but I'm going to hold 2 that I got from a really early point in time because like the cost basis on them is so low that when I sell them, I'm going to have a big tax bill. I'm going to hold these 2 and I'm just going to sit here and see if he redeems himself. So the next day, he made a thread where he said everything that he should have said on the spaces the night before. And it made me think, if he would have just said what he said in the thread on the space, like, the situation would have been 50% better at least. But the way that he had presented himself on that space, I think there was like 11,000 or more listeners on the space. It was one of the most attended spaces I've ever seen as like an NFT community member. And it was crazy how bad. It was like a train wreck. Like, I wish I had a recording I could link to you. There might be one somewhere. But it was a train wreck, the answers he said. So I think there is a road to redemption. I feel like for Zagabond, though, I don't agree, I guess, with the path he's taken on the road to redemption. I think everything they've done so far is things they should have done before the community got enraged. Like, the Funks, or the Zonks, they should have had their contract given to their community months ago when they were abandoned. Like, it shouldn't have taken this article and then outrage for them to get access to the contract, because this group of creators rugged the, public contract of that community. And I think, like, it is important to note that on the Azuki team, there are members of the Azuki team who were not involved with Zonks, Funks, and Tendies and the other things. Most importantly, the artist, Steam Boy. He came from the Overwatch team. He worked at Activision Blizzard and helped develop Overwatch characters like Tracer and McCree. And he came over, and I don't think from everything I've seen that he realized, like, the team that he partnered with in some aspects had made, like, Zonks and Funks. And there are other people on the Azuki team who weren't involved with Zonks, Funks, Tendies, and whatnot. So I think it is important to, like, not throw the baby out with the bathwater, in the sense of, like, there's a lot of solid people working on the Azuki project who weren't involved with those bad vibes projects. But I think for Zagabond, he either should have, like, stepped down or doxed himself, or something, like, to either say, hey, like, I realize, like, I can't be the head of this community because I don't know how to manage communities unless they're giving me tons of money in royalties, and once the royalties dry up, I feel like I need to leave and start something else. Like, he should, in my mind, have stepped down or came out and been like, hey, like, I realize I fucked up. I'm putting myself out there. Like, this is who I am. I'm not leaving. Like, I am dedicated to the Azuki team for the next, X amount of years. The fact that neither of those happened made me a little disappointed.
It didn't seem like it was fully remorseful.
No. It felt like, it was not authentic.
You can't have a pathway to redemption once you've actually, like, redeemed yourself, right? Like, it's like you actually have to, like, come out and maybe, like, not necessarily, like, following your sword, but there had to be contrition, because I listened to some of the Twitter spaces as well, and I was really shocked that it seemed like there was a tone deafness. I'm like, look, this is an apology. Just apologize fully, and then do what you can to rectify the mistakes you've made in the past, right? But there was still a sense of arrogance that it definitely shocked even me as well.
Yeah, it was crazy. I thought you nailed it. It was tone deaf. It was, you're really going to say this right now? Really? Like, that's why, what? Like, product market fit? Learning experience? You have to show, some remorse for what you did and be like, hey, like, I fucked up. Like, I'm sorry. I didn't realize when I got into crypto the expectations of managing a community, and I just wanted to launch, what I thought were novel, cool projects. And I am, going to make it up to these communities. I'm going to give them back their contracts. I'm going to send over the royalties I got from changing the looks rare shit to 5% and catching that Funks guy wash trading, like things like that. I don't know if that one struck me as weird. Like, oh, they just changed the royalties on looks rare to, like, 5% to screw over the wash trader. Like, but yeah, I feel like you're spot on. There was no remorse, and without remorse, it's hard for me to feel like there is a path to forgiveness in that sense.
Definitely. Let's talk about your favorite books, by the way. Are there any favorite books that you've read that, like, have informed I remember yesterday you had linked a particular Twitter thread that once I read it, it really, I bookmarked it as well as coming back to it. But are there any favorite books that you've read that have a profound impact in your life?
Dude, that Twitter thread, just to stop right there, like anybody listening to this, I feel like they all need to read that Twitter thread.
We'll link it. We'll link it in the podcast. Link it.
Yeah, 100%. Every single person should take like 5 minutes and read this Twitter thread. It'll change your life. You're going to think differently about spending time with friends and family and loved ones. You're going to think differently about how short life is. It's a great Twitter thread. Books, I feel like I haven't read as much as I would like lately, but I read some books in the last 5 or so years that have impacted me pretty well. I would say most recently, there's a book called The $12 Million Stuffed Shark or something like that. And it's about the modern art world. And for me, like as an NFT collector who started to get into art, I felt like I didn't have enough art experience or like art knowledge. So I started going down this rabbit hole to try to figure out like, what does modern art look like? And it talks a lot about like Jeff Koons, Andy Warhol, Damien Hirst, and how they commoditized art. But it's a really interesting book. If you are interested at all in the art market, definitely suggest going down there. I think a really important book in general, there's 2 of them, but one is Influence and the other is Persuasion. And they're both by an artist named Robert Cialdini. But these 2 books help you think about all the different ways you're manipulated by all the different stimuli in your life that you don't think of. And it helps you also to maybe persuade and influence other people, or think about the different levers you can pull on to persuade and influence other people. I look at it from a more defensive mechanism. Like I want to learn that type of stuff and think about it so that I can be defensive against people who may be trying to manipulate me. So those books are Influence and Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. Another good book, I would say, let's think here. There's one called The Systems Bible by John Gall. And it just has all of these like heuristics for thinking about systems in life, not only human, like people-driven systems like bureaucracy and government, but also like systems just in nature and how they perpetuate themselves. And it is a really interesting way to just think about systems. Let me give like 2 more because I could go on a little bit. Another one is The Lessons of History by Will and Ariel Durant. That one just goes back through like the history of human civilization till now and shows, repeating faults that humans make in society, whether it's in like ancient Rome or like before Christ or even now. It's like human psychology hasn't changed and we do the same shit. It just is with different technology and different people at different times. That's a really interesting book. And then last one is kind of like a mixed bag book. It's called Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss. But he just he sends a bunch of really good questions to a bunch of really cool people who like CEOs of companies and actors and famous people. And they answer the questions really thoughtfully, and he compiles it into like an almanac or a book of all their answers. Yeah, there's some books there that I think will make you think differently about the world and also are pretty interesting and thought-provoking.
Definitely. So I want to give people an idea of what some of the lows and some of the highs with NFTs are. Can you speak to some of your lowest, like the amount of losses you've encountered with NFTs in terms of dollar terms? And also, like, what are some of the highs you've seen people get in this space so that people have a range of, this is what it looks like on a really great day, and this is really what it looks like on a really bad day?
Yeah. So, I mean, my first experience with losses wasn't even in NFTs, it was just crypto in general. And I literally lost all my money from zero. Imagine like you put in a couple $1,000s and you turn it into, a small house, and then like you burn your house to the ground over 9 months. And that's like kind of how it felt. And now you're like, oh, like I'm in a box again. And I'm outside I don't even have shelter. that's how it felt, like running my capital all the way down to zero and having nothing. In the NFT space, I've taken $50,000, $100,000 losses on things. I've had, a flip go bad. I think one of my worst, I'll look it up, but one of my worst ever losses was like 66 Ethereum when Ethereum was like $3,000 or $4,000 a piece. So that, is almost $240,000 loss. Some of my biggest wins, my biggest win is probably I flipped the Fidenza for like 290 ETH, which at the time was 3,000-ish maybe. So that was like, a fucking insane. That flip let my wife quit her job basically, and said like, you don't need to go back to work. Like, I've flipped punks. I've had some nice longer term holds where like, I've made 80 or 100 ETH off a punk, couple apes like that. Actually only one ape where I made like 100 ETH, but there's a bunch of small wins along the way too. Like when I was starting out, I was trying to make 0.1 ETH per flip. So I was looking for like, how do I make 0.1 ETH? And at the time, 0.1 ETH was like $100 because ETH was 1,000. And if I could make 0.1 ETH a day, I was like, this is fucking broken. Like, this is insane. So I was flipping punks, like buying it for 3.6, trying to sell it for like 4, settling at 3.8. And like, I thought it was great. And I just worked my way up. Like, I always just treated it like trying to get better, trying to manage my risk and not, ever have too much of my eggs in one basket. And when the price goes up, making sure that you sell. Like a lot of people, they'll buy low and they'll watch it go up, but then they get greedy and they're like, well, what if it goes up another 2x? And there needs to come a point where like you need to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you're just always going to be like greedy. You're going to be like, well, shit, like it's already went up 5x, like it could double again. But if you have a plan, you could be like, okay, when I buy this, if this goes up 3x, I'm going to sell it. And if it goes up more, I'm happy. But my plan is that when it's at 3x, I'm going to sell it. And you get to a point where like you start buying things only in threes. It's like if I'm going to buy an NFT, I'm not going to buy one of it. I'm going to try to buy 3. That way, if it doubles or triples, I can sell one and I'm happy. I'm stoked. I'm like, boom, I made some money, but I still have 2 left. And now I can be like a little more thoughtful with the other 2. Like, oh, now is it a 5x? Like, I'm going to sell that one, and now I have 1 left. And if it goes to 10x, I'm out, and I'm happy. Like, having a plan lets you actually execute the plan and make the profit. A lot of people just buy it, it goes up, they have no plan, and they're just like, oh, it's going to keep going up. But nothing keeps going up forever. Like, you have to get off at some point. So they just hold it and it goes back down to where they bought it, and then they get off, and they round trip. Like, what happened? Like, I was up so much. How did I let that happen? And it's like, well, you let it happen because you didn't have a plan. And since you didn't have a plan, you didn't know what you were doing, and you just took the trip.
So never take round trips. Just take the one-way trip.
Unless you plan it, if that's part of the plan. I mean, maybe you're planning a round trip, and that's cool, but like.
So for people who are listening, right, just to give you guys an idea, 1 ETH is about average maybe between $1,500 to $2,000. Right. So I know these
1,800. Yep.
1,800. So I think, so let's talk about the times when you're like, hey, I'll do this at like 5x. And then it goes up to like 60x or 70x or whatever x it goes up. And you're like, like, yes, this was my plan, but damn, like, has that happened to you recently in the past year or so?
Yeah, 100%. So with the squiggles, this is probably my best example. With the Chromie squiggles, I was talking about when I was minting them for like $30. My plan, so $30 at the time was like 0.004 or 0.04. I think it was 0.04 ETH per squiggle. So it was small. And my plan was that when they got to, I didn't even know if they would ever get there, but if they got to half an Ethereum, which was, well over a 10x, I would sell half of the entire amount, and I would hold the other half for damn near forever, or until prices got so ridiculous I had to sell. And because I wanted to bet on Snowfro. The guy I mentioned earlier, in the Punks Discord, one of the moderators, one of like the elders, Snowfro. I wanted to have exposure to what he was doing, but I knew that I would need to sell some at some point. So they went to half an Ethereum within like 4 months, and I sold like 25 out of my 50 squiggles. And then 3 months later, a floor squiggle was 14 or like 13 Ethereum.
Wow.
And I was just doing the math like, okay, I had 50 of them that I sold for half an ETH. I would have got at least 10 more ETH piece. That would have been like 500 plus ETH, which would have been like over $1 million extra. That sucks. But I still have 25 left. And my plan allows me to sell some where I feel like it's crazy. So let me sell 10. And then it's like, okay, I got like 100 ETH out of those 10. That's incredible. Like,
yeah.
Holy shit. Like, that's fucking insane. I bought these for 9 months ago for $30. So when you frame it like that, it's like, okay, like I had my plan. I sold 25 of them at half an ETH, but by selling them at half an ETH, I had the plan of holding the others until the prices got kind of crazy. And I still have 15 of them. Like I love the squiggles. Like they're down. They're only like 7 ETH now or 6 ETH. They're not 14 anymore, but I still have this long-term vision, and I have my plan of just holding them until I think they get to be ridiculous again. And if they never get to be ridiculous, I will hold them forever and literally hand them down to my kids. Like, that sounds crazy, but they, to me, are like the genesis almost of my NFT journey, as well as Snowfro's genesis. And if at the very end of like this whole thing, if they're not worth a ridiculous amount of money, I would still have a ton of sentimental value, and I love them. So that's, for me, was my biggest one where it was like, oh shit. I minted a Fidenza, and I sold it for 0.3 ETH, and then I bought 2 I liked for like 0.6 and 0.7 ETH, which I still own today. Like, I didn't sell them when they went up to 300 ETH. I held them all the way back down to, I think now they're at like 70. But I love them. They're hanging up in my house. Like, some things you just get so attached to that you don't want the money out of. And I think that's the power of the NFTs and why I'm so drawn to them in the first place.
I can just imagine. Deeze, everyone gets to deal with failure at some point. What would you say was your first major encounter with failure, or even significant encounter with failure? And what would you say you learned from it, and what did the experience teach you?
My first encounter with failure, I mean, there's probably some growing up that played a role that aren't coming to mind.
What's the most significant one that you can recall?
The most recent one that I can think of, or the most significant one in my life, is my freshman year of college. I went in thinking I wanted to be a computer science major and do computer science and engineering. And my first semester, I failed my calculus class. And then my second semester, I retook calculus, failed it again. And then I also failed my physics class. And I lost all my financial aid. So I was only going to be in debt like 10 grand going to school for 4 years. And my financial aid was going to cover the rest. And I ended up in debt like 30 plus grand because I lost my financial aid for my sophomore year because my GPA was so bad. And it was the first time in my life that I ever had to try for something. Like, I just walked through my whole life not trying. I was the type of kid who would play video games all day when he came home from school. I babysat my siblings, and then I would play video games at night. I never studied for any test. I never, prepared. I would do my homework the period before it was due just to get it done. Like, I procrastinate everything. And I was never humbled like that before. Like, oh, like I can't just walk in and like pass calculus. Like, I need to sit down and get a tutor and like learn this. What the fuck? Like, what is this? And going through, so the long story is like I got out of computer science. I switched my major to be less math oriented, because what I realized is that in high school, when I was building my foundation of geometry, trigonometry, and the important things for pre-calculus, I wasn't retaining any of it. So when I somehow passed up into calculus in the college, like I had no math backbone to think about fucking calculus with. Like it was so bad. I know like multiplication, addition, subtraction, division, and then like everything else was out the window and I just got screwed. So I realized like, okay, I can rebuild my entire math foundation, but do I feel this committed or this strongly about computer science? No, not really. Let me lean into my strengths, and my strengths are more like communication and people focus, not numbers and logic on a screen. So once I started playing to my strengths and trying a lot harder, like actually studying for hours and not just like 30 minutes, but like, okay, I'm going to study an hour a night for a week straight before the quiz. That way I'm prepared. Like doing things like that made me realize like how hard I needed to work for the things I wanted. And I never in life felt like I had to work hard for something until I got to college and failed really hard. And by like kind of rebuilding my work ethic in college, I think that's what helped me succeed so much in the crypto and NFT space, because I got into the crypto space the year I graduated college. So I had just like kind of rebuilt my mental frameworks and a little bit of discipline. Then I got into cryptocurrency and was so curious and so like willing to jump in the rabbit hole and learn and get my hands and feet dirty that like it just worked out for me in the end, and now I'm here.
I love it. So then, if the only thing left in the world, Deeze, was to read a book about your life, what would you title the name of the book?
Oh man, that's such a good question.
It's a good one, right?
I've never got that one before. What would I title a book about my life? Probably something to do with a Lindy walk. Like it might maybe just a Lindy walk or something like that.
A Lindy walk.
A Lindy walk.
Why that title?
Okay, so like the Lindy walk is this thing I talk about on Twitter all the time, but it basically goes off of this phrase called the Lindy effect, which is just the idea that it's the idea that the longer something is around, the longer it will continue to be around. So like something that's very Lindy is like the Bible. It's been around for like 2,200 years. It's not going anywhere, anywhere soon. Something that's
it has staying power
is like a profile picture that I just minted today. So a Lindy walk is the idea that like humans just always will walk to walk, like walk to vibe. Like you walk around town, walk around nature. You don't have a specific goal in mind. You're just walking to observe and be present in that environment as you're walking. And I think like to me, the Lindy walk is so important because it just lets me get outside, get literally touch grass in a way. Like I meme about that sometimes on Twitter, but like I feel like a lot of us spend so much time in front of screens all day, whether it's our phone, our laptop, our desktop, iPad, whatever. We're always looking at screens, and it's important to just like go outside in nature and be present. Like watch tree branches sway, watch chipmunks jump, squirrels go up trees. Like there's something about it. It's just, I don't know, I feel really powerful or spiritually connected to. So I would say that my life is like a Lindy walk in the sense that like I don't try to plan too much. I try to just be present and take each day as it is, and just kind of vibe and see where it takes me. So that's why I would choose that as a title.
I love it. Deeze, man, thank you so much for stopping by the Afropolitan Podcast. I hope you've had a great time. This was so informative, and I believe that our community is going to learn so much from this. But thank you, bro.
No, thank you for having me, man. I'm excited to talk more and to vibe later on. But I just like, I feel like this is such a good conversation. I talked a lot. I probably talked too much, but I really appreciate you having me on, and I had a great time.
Awesome. Thank you, Deeze. Have a great one, bro.
You too, man.
Thank you for listening to the Afropolitan Podcast. We are building the future of a progressive Black community. To join our community, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Afropolitan. Be sure to join our Discord and Clubhouse community by clicking on the link tree on our Instagram page. See you on social.